One of the greatest points about the whole Master Robe situation, the mystery of what was going on, is that if you rewind back when this mystery first started, if you were really paying attention to theories, comments, and I think a lot of people's train of thought, the reveal that happened in this episode was actually one of the biggest names that was brought up among so many different people. But what Shadow's House cleverly did was it immediately made everyone start second-guessing themselves, making them say, but what if this? What if him? What if her? And in doing so, I think one of the most obvious reveals, one of the most obvious candidates for being Master Robe was quickly shielded as if, a ton of cards just got laid out in front of her and she was just blended in with them. And as we're flipping all these cards trying to find the right person, we kind of came up stumped. I forget exactly what video it was. I think it was 2 or 3 videos back in Shadow's House. I remember there was this great comment that was just going on and they're saying, it's gotta be this or this, but that seems too obvious, and then transitions into, where I was kind of thinking too. And I love how if we didn't second guess ourselves, we probably would have been able to guess this so soon. And I think that's what Shadow's House does so well, is that it's just so good at covering up its mystery, not in a way that it makes the viewer feel stupid, but more so cleverly shields the big answers almost right away, that if you don't second guess yourself, a lot of these you could see coming, but it's hard not to second guess yourself when second guessing feels like the most likely bet, because now you're not being just casually dragged along the obvious plotline. Shadow's House isn't an easy-to-predict series, it's not a cliche series, so of course we gotta stretch our brain muscles here. And in fact, this reveal just comes and it's like the most obvious, I think, candid that I think this Mary Rose was probably one of the biggest names that was initially brought up I remember seeing in the earlier portions of this arc. And quickly was like, nah, it can't be her. Nah, there's just no way, right? And just, if you kind of rewind, look back at the clues, it's so obvious, but we didn't see it coming because we second-guessed ourselves. And that's what's so great about it. There's a lot of questions on the why. I mean, a big factor is the ability to remember who they started out as, right? The whole idea that these shadows have really no knowledge similar to that of the living dolls. Once this whole agreement starts up, they just have knowledge of where they're currently at. But as we see, there's a couple of special people, including Kate, that remember the before. And that's a pretty big moment, which I was actually expecting to be a lot more dramatic than what they ended up delivering, but I was actually okay, because if you think about it, right, the past few episodes, or at least the past 2 episodes or so, have been really propelling the whole idea of, like, as the living dolls sort of become closer and they become more understanding of what it is to be a human, and you have the shadows also kind of feeling like they're growing these bonds, it feels like the disconnect between master and servant is starting to grow a bit more, and there could come a point where that trust is no longer there. So to have them actually all stick by Kate in a moment where it easily could have been drama of she kept the big secret all to herself, well, she's intelligent, she has a lot on her plate. I was actually perfectly okay with it, even though initially I was like, damn, pretty obvious how this episode's gonna end. Bit of drama, bit of heartbreak. Next week will come around, probably resolve it, but they'll leave us off on a cliffhanger with them all pissy with her. Instead, no, they went a route that I think kind of brings them back together after feeling like they were a little pushed away recently. You can even look at episode 7, right? I mean, the whole idea of Lou and Louise, I mean, she very much is kind of just dragging her living doll around. She's absolutely exhausted, and over the course of, like, gathering that information, it wasn't until the workout session that she very much understood that, oh shit, there's other things than just saying the doll's okay, and the whole concept of basically the living doll and the shadow have to be considered one, as you have the Ricky as well as Patrick situation. There's a compliment to one of them, and they basically end up asking, hey, are you saying it about him, or are you saying it about me? And they basically call them a child because they don't understand that you guys are basically one. So I think if you look at episode 7 as more of the setup to this episode, it works pretty well because it kind of works as showing that there's such a disconnect between the master and servant relationship and also where each of these pairings are currently at mentality-wise. You have the romance feeling like, okay, well, I have these feelings for Emilico, this is something I have to keep all into myself. Given the circumstance, and as episode 8 calls it, it's a house of kidnapping. And it's just a bunch of kidnappers who kidnap living people and turn them into slaves for these basically parasites to feed on them, become them, and probably end up disposing of them when they no longer need them. And I think it's quite fascinating watching how these 2 episodes just kind of held hands to lead to this moment, and it feels like there's still so much left to reveal that even with the identity now here, we still have so much more mystery to expose, and that's pretty exciting. Like, over the course of most of episode 8, I truly had no idea where they were leading up. You know, with the whole flower, we knew it was a misunderstanding, but it was a good moment. I was like, oh shit, it's the person who gave them the flowers in, I think it was episode 7, right? And then just the build up throughout everything, it just was like, to me anyway, I had like 12 names that I was like, oh, they're gonna say this name, they're gonna say this name. And then when Mary Rose pops up, you're like, God damn it, if I a month ago would have just stuck to my guns and stuck with what so many people were predicting, and like before we started second guessing ourselves, you know, we would have been able to reveal it. But that's what Shadow Says does so well compared to so many, because often you have, like, in a reveal like this, a moment where the obvious person, right, you're saying, this is who it's going to be, and then they reveal someone completely different that when you look back at the previous breadcrumbs, it doesn't make sense. It's clearly just the author pulling something from thin air. They didn't plan it out right, and in doing so, they just wanted to create a shock rather than make something well written and ending up predictable. And instead, they go for the shock, but it doesn't make sense. Shadow's House, it so casually covers up its tracks, and it's not the first time it's done that. And the way it makes you second guess yourself never feels like, oh man, they made me feel stupid. I love that they make me second guess myself and make me say it's obviously not going to be this person, or it's obviously not going to be this reveal in this way. And they do it, and it sucker punches me in the best way that I asked for more. I mean, episode 7 was basically a setup episode, which was a kind of portion of why I decided not to do a video last week. That, and I just kind of wanted a day off since I do videos every single day. Also, the fact that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 has been calling my name every single day that I possibly can play it. So I took the day off because I did a little skim just with the scroll bar. I was like, okay, it looks like it's going to be more of a setup episode. Not to say it was bad or anything, but I think watching 7 and 8 back to back really makes me appreciate the reveal so much more, because it felt like with each of them getting their own bits of information, feeling like each of them have their own little struggles, whether it's the, I like someone that my master doesn't like their master's equivalent, or you have the, you know, you have to treat your face with care. There's all these different moments that felt like we're building up to something. I just wasn't quite expecting Master Robe just yet, but it makes sense in the context, especially given it feels like the appropriate moment leading into the last third of Season 2, and that has me quite excited for more. Who knows where we go from here? There's a lot of rage, there's a lot of pissed off emotions, but at the same time, there's always been an element of, is this really friend or foe? And I think both of those are kind of what she represents. There's an element of wanting to be an ally, but also an element of basically superiority, like someone feeling like they're standing above you, as Kate kind of does throw it back in her face. But excited nonetheless, great couple of episodes, emotional, a little bit of comedy, but a great reveal, and that's kind of the bread and butter of Shadow Says at this point in time, the mystery and then the reveals. But thoughts down below, theories if you got any on where we go from here, leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you're new around here. Till next time everyone, please take care and have a good one.